You were born in ancient Rome and had the good fortune, or misfortune, of marrying into high society. You didn't choose very well, but no one did. It was all about money, rings, and keeping your blood pure. Love? Only if it was to memorize your altar speech. At first, it even seems like a victory. You parade through the marble streets with your jewelry and your embroidered cloak, and your neighbors whisper with envy. You feel invincible. After all, you were married to a senator, a general, or a rich heiress with a heavy name. Everyone smiles at you, right in front. But Rome wasn't made for happy endings. You soon discover that living together is easy. The hard part is surviving when your marriage starts to crack. And in ancient Rome, those cracks were as deep as the Colosseum. Let's say your spouse starts cheating on you. Nothing new under the sun. Adultery was practically an Olympic sport in Rome. Senators paid prostitutes, elite ladies kept secret slaves under their sheets. You know it, everyone knows it. But pretending not to know is the trick to staying alive. You try to ignore it. You pretend you don't hear the rumors. You pretend you don't see the disheveled clothes, the hastily changed necklaces. Until one day, you can't take it anymore. You explode. And what comes next? What everyone fears: divorce. Divorce in Rome was not exactly forbidden. On the contrary, it was so common that even children learned to pronounce it divorce. All it took was an "I'm sending you away," and that was it. Legally, you were free. Free and screwed. Because leaving your marriage meant leaving everything that protected you. You stopped being a senator's wife and became an ex-wife. And in Rome, an ex-wife was basically synonymous with a disposable woman. They looked at you with the same pity they would look at a broken statue. If he were a man, he didn't think he would get off easy. If he decided to leave his powerful wife, the daughter of a wealthy family with an influential father, her father would become his worst nightmare. He could ruin you politically, arrange false accusations of treason, divert favors. Rome was a theater, and all it took was one well-told rumor for your reputation to turn to dust. But what about women? Well, it was even worse. If you were a woman, divorced, you didn't even have enough dignity to hide under your tunic. Your family could reject you. Your new home was to return to your father's house, humiliated, without a dowry. Many became bargaining chips again, pushed into another, even worse marriage. Oh, and don't think that you got half of everything like today. Forget it. In ancient Rome, the man, or his family, almost always got the money. The dowry went back to the wife's parents only if the divorce was the husband's fault. Guess who was at fault in most cases? The courts were dominated by old men who enjoyed humiliating young women. Alleging adultery was easy. Proving it, even easier. All it took was a slave to swear he saw something strange happening in the bedroom. Money buys silence, but it buys gossip even more. If you were divorced, you were branded as unfaithful, immoral, and without honor. And in Rome, honor was everything. Without it, you would not eat at the best banquets, would not receive invitations, would not remarry anyone decent. You would become the laughingstock of public baths. Want a bonus? If you had children, don't count on them. They stayed with their father. The father decided whether you could visit, whether you could send gifts, whether you could even see their faces in the courthouse. Divorced mothers lost their children like a ring in the water. Meanwhile, your ex-spouse was probably already showing off with someone else, the same person who may have helped to bury your marriage. Rome loved this. Human tragedies became street gossip. Everyone talked about it. Everyone laughed. Except you. And if by chance you decided to speak up, open your mouth, expose betrayals, shout out injustices, congratulations! You would end up being socially expelled once and for all. Being discreet was a matter of survival. Revenge? Only if it was through poison, stabbing, or blackmail. And even then, the one who died the most was you. Little by little, the divorce spread like a dirty rumor. Friends drifted away, relatives fell silent, neighbors looked down at you when you passed by. You began to walk down the street with your head down, as if you were invisible. And you were. Some lucky women managed to reclaim their reputations. They found another husband, preferably a widower. But they lived as shadows, always remembered as the one who got divorced. A walking reminder that love was a luxury and marriage was a sentence. If you were a man, you could even rise again, but you would pay the price. Rumors of impotence, rumors of betrayal, rumors of cowardice. Rome lived on rumors, and you were the walking headline of them all. In the end, marriage was a coin. Divorce was like throwing it into the Tiber, never to be recovered. You quickly learned that divorce in ancient Rome didn't just end love, it ended everything else too. Maybe, looking back, you wish you had held on a little longer, pretended you didn't see, ignored the betrayals, smiled at banquets, pretending everything was perfect. Because in ancient Rome, love could be beautiful, but divorce was an absolute disaster. Over time, you realized that Rome had a cruel way of reminding you of your failure. The engagement ring that once shone on your finger is now just another piece of jewelry sold on the black market to pay off debts that arose when you lost the protection of your ex's family. You end up being invited only to the worst places. Parties where no one cares who you are, where drunk old men laugh loudly, where looks pass you like cracked glass. Divorced women try to help each other. A discreet group, whispering solutions. Who can become a courtesan? Who can flee to distant provinces? Who can find a powerful lover to hide under his toga? But none of this can erase the invisible stamp on their foreheads: divorced. If you were a man, you would discover that the Senate loves to pretend to be moral. A bill appears to punish those who divorce without a just cause. And who decides what the just cause is? That's right, a bunch of old men who cheat on their own wives and judge their morals. Sometimes you think about reinventing yourself, opening a business, creating a scandal, selling your own story in the form of satire in the theaters. But be careful, Rome also loves to silence those who talk too much. Scandal is entertainment until you become dangerous. In the temples, you light candle after candle. You ask Juno, goddess of marriage, not to hate you so much. You ask Venus, goddess of love, to give you another chance. But Roman gods laugh at fools, and you, divorced, are the official fool this time. If he were rich enough, he could still afford a good defense, bribe witnesses, buy speeches, rewrite the narrative. Say he was a victim, that he suffered betrayal, that he only wanted to save his family. Some believed him, others pretended not to. But what about the poor? If you were a commoner, your divorce would become tavern gossip. No one would defend you. Your ex would accuse you of everything: violence, laziness, impotence. People would laugh and throw cheap wine on the floor in your honor. You would lose what little you had. And what if she was a poor woman? Even worse. Many of them didn't even have the official right to marry like the patricians. They lived tied down by family agreements. The husband would leave debts, disappear into the army, and you were left to fend for yourself. Some left everything and became clandestine gladiators, lovers of legionaries, priestesses of secret cults. Anything was better than dying of shame, standing in the same neighborhood where everyone knew you as the Start. The worst part was seeing their own children, if they were lucky enough to keep them around, repeat their story. They grew up hearing that marriage is a duty, but love is foolishness, that betrayal is part of it, but separation is shameful. That's how Rome kept on functioning. That's why many preferred to live in dead marriages. Separate beds, separate lives, but the same roof. At parties, they posed together like statues of a happy couple.
No one needed to know the rot behind the silken curtain. There were exceptions, of course. There's always an exception to decorate the tragedy. A wife who ran away in disguise to live freely in another city. A husband who accepted his shame and started over in some northern colony. But most didn't have the courage, nor the gold to start over. Meanwhile, Rome laughed, because Rome loved drama. Painted walls in Pompeii held obscene jokes, caricatures of cheated husbands, scribbles of naked wives. Everyone pretended to be moral, but lived for scandal.
At night, lying in your cold bed, you go over each decision you made. You remember your first kiss, your vows by the fire, the parties, the invitations, the pride. And you think, when did it all turn to dust? Maybe when you believed that love was greater than status. Maybe when you forgot that in Rome, wedding rings were shackles with gold lacquer. They shone, but they held you back. The next day you wake up early. You put on your best robe. You walk through the streets trying not to see any familiar faces, because every face reminds you of who you were and what you lost. You pass by women who still parade around with their jewelry. Some smile with pity. Others smile with fear that one day they will be you. And you smile back, because that is what Rome teaches. Those who fall smile on the outside and die on the inside. Sometimes between the cracked columns of the Forum, you hear other rumors. Someone important has gotten divorced. Someone powerful has been betrayed. You watch from afar like a ghost, knowing that soon they will join you in the club of social outcasts. Meanwhile, the city continues to devour your stories. The walls whisper secrets. The baths spread lies. The squares repeat jokes. And you keep walking, invisible, but still there. In the end, divorce in ancient Rome wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of a cover. You discovered that the only thing more dangerous than love was trying to get out of the game alive. You could escape marriage, but you could never escape judgment. In Rome, your reputation was your last cloak, and once it was torn, no one would cover you again. And that's why, if someone ever asks you why it was so terrible to get divorced in ancient Rome, it's simple. You didn't just lose your husband or your wife. You lost everything, even your dignity.